Hello everyone. Welcome to my YNR 24 spoilers. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Kyle's tragic finding. Claire's covert relationship with Holden explodes in LA. According to rumors and updates for The Young and the Restless, Kyle Abbott might discover Claire Newman and Holden Novak sharing a bed. Could catastrophe and heartache be the outcome of Kyle's LA endeavor? Kyle's buttons have been pushed by Audra regarding Claire's trip with Holden. Kyle will have to make a crucial decision after Audra Charles irritates him about Claire's stay in Los Angeles with Holden. Holden tries to persuade Claire to stay with him instead, but Kyle refuses to just relax. Kyle doesn't seem to have learnt from his several instances of pressuring Claire, which resulted in disastrous failure. Kyle continues to make bad decisions about Claire, even though you would think he would understand by now that this strategy is unsuccessful. YNR spoilers indicate that Kyle's choice will be definitive, despite possible intervention from Diane Jenkins Abbott and Jack Abbott, Peter Bergman. To get Claire back, Kyle intends to fly to Los Angeles, but he may have a rude awakening. Kyle may have to confront a tough truth, but the idea is to fly to Los Angeles and try everything to get Claire back. After formally ending her relationship with Kyle, Claire is suddenly single and free to do as she pleases with Holden. If she chooses to, this can entail having sex. Claire is obviously upset about her most recent dispute with Kyle, which may have strengthened her resolve to forge her own path. All of Kyle's warnings about Holden might make Claire want to prove herself, which would cause her to quickly escalate the situation with Holden. Claire and Holden might be caught by Kyle sneaking into her hotel room. When Kyle gets to Los Angeles, it's easy to see him finding out Claire's hotel and room number, but he won't want to see what he might stumble into. It would be obvious that they have been intimate if he knocked on Claire's door and she was wearing skimpy clothing with Holden. While Claire sits nearby in lingerie or something, Holden could open the door without a shirt, thinking it was room service. However, Kyle could be able to get a key card with the intention of surprising Claire in her room with a romantic gesture. However, if Claire is with Holden, he might be the one who is taken by surprise. Anyway, according to spoilers for The Young and the Restless, Kyle's visit might result in some startling revelations. So tune in for all the most recent drama, unresolved issues, wife concerns, and interrogating a former partner. Spoilers for Tuesday, October 7th episode of The Young and the Restless suggest that Genoa City will see some dramatic events. A character questions their ex, a wife worries, and two rivals have some unresolved business. What can we expect from Tuesday's performance? It's time to find out. Jill Abbott versus Nikki Newman. According to spoilers for Tuesday, October 7th episode of The Young and the Restless, Nikki Newman and Jill Abbott will face off as they attempt to resolve some outstanding issues. Although Nikki and Jill have rarely agreed, they both adore and admire Katherine Chancellor, which is something they can agree on. Will they be able to find some common ground? Or will this confrontation turn ugly? Only time will tell. But it sounds like fans can anticipate a truce between the two women. Read this. LA mission brings horror and heartbreak. Kyle catches Claire and Holden in bed in The Young and the Restless spoilers? Tessa Porter is concerned. During the October 7th episode, Tessa Porter will be worried about her wife Mariah Copeland's safety in addition to everything else she has to worry about. Nothing about this sounds good. It will be upsetting when Tessa and Daniel report to Sharon Newman what they learned while looking into Mariah's incident while she was on business. Before leaving town for therapy, Mariah told Tessa that she had attempted to strangle the older guy. However, what details would Tessa and Daniel give Sharon? And how serious is the situation? Nick Newman is seeking clarification. According to Tuesday's spoilers for The Young and the Restless, Nick Newman will question Phyllis Summers on her partnership with Kane Ashby. Will Red keep avoiding him, or will he receive any answers that he finds satisfactory? Nick has been frantically attempting to contact his ex-wife, but she hasn't changed her position at all. Will Kane break the tie or friendship between Nick and Phyllis? Kyle Abbott was meant to turn his life around in Los Angeles. Following all the betrayals, power struggles, and never-ending corporate wars that characterized Genoa City life, it was supposed to be the place where he would regain not only his pride, but also the woman who had escaped his grasp, Claire Newman. However, Kyle was unaware that what lay ahead of him as his private plane swooped through the California fog was not a renewed love, but rather heartbreak beyond his wildest expectations. Audra Charles had been pushing buttons she knew by heart and whispering toxic truths in his ear for days. She was skilled at identifying the weakest link in a man's armor, and Kyle's was obvious. His pride, his need to control what he couldn't bear to lose, and his possessiveness. You genuinely believe Claire is in Los Angeles? For commercial purposes? Audra's lips curled into that sly grin as she purred across the table at society. She's there with Kyle and Holden Novak. Time is not something he wastes. He will flatter her and enchant her, and when the lights go out, well, let's just say she won't think about you anymore. He was troubled by her statements the entire journey to the airport. Audra was exaggerating and attempting to provoke him. He had told himself, but he knew deep inside that she never wasted her breath unless she detected blood in the water. Kyle therefore made a flight reservation in the pretense of doing business. But this was not the case. Claire was at the center, about how her texts had gotten shorter, classier, and more formal, and about the late nights she had spent working with Holden on the Los Angeles rebranding effort for Newman Media. She used to bombard his phone with late-night confessions and heart emojis, but now every response felt like a corporate memo. Kyle couldn't bear the uncertainty of what had changed. Jack Abbott has previously saw this expression in his son's eyes back in Genoa City. Many of Kyle's relationships had been ruined by the same risky mix of damaged ego and reckless impulse. Jack had urged, his voice tinged with worry and fatigue, "Don't go chasing her, son. Give Claire space if she needs it. All you'll do is drive her farther away." Kyle wasn't paying attention, though. When love, jealousy, and obsession entangled themselves like barbed wire in his chest, he had never been adept at waiting. Diane had also made an effort. She reminded him that sometimes it took strength to walk away by lightly touching his arm. Kyle, however, only saw surrender as a sign of weakness. He believed that by making extravagant, newsworthy gestures he could win her back. Claire would never expect a flight to Los Angeles, a flower-filled hotel suite, or even an apology. He was unaware that the plot had already taken a darker turn by the time he touched down. Claire Newman was battling a flurry of emotions of her own. It had hurt to break up with Kyle, but it had to be done. He was a kind but insensitive man who was intense and occasionally smothering. Conversely, Holden Novak was simple. She laughed at him. He didn't ask for justifications. Holden stood for something uncommon in Los Angeles. Freedom, away from the rumors of Genoa City and the turmoil of the Newman family. Claire hadn't intended to fall for him, though. Not this quickly, at least. However, she had let her guard down one evening after drinking too much wine and talking with someone about second chances and redemption. The subsequent kiss was spontaneous, impulsive, and the result of curiosity and loneliness. She felt guilty when she woke up the following morning in Holden's arms, but she also realized that she didn't regret it. Kyle, meanwhile, had reached the slick hotel in Beverly Hills where Newman Media had reserved accommodations for their staff. The scent of betrayal, roses, and money filled the air. He started asking inquiries at the front desk right away after checking in under his own name, which he would later discover was a mistake. Showing off his Abbott charm, he remarked, "I think Miss Claire Newman is staying here. Could you inform her that her fiancé is coming to give her a surprise?" Too courteous to ask, the receptionist gave him a tentative smile, and the room number 1017. Kyle didn't even pause to reflect. He rode the elevator with his heart racing and his thoughts racing through all the various outcomes. She would be surprised, upset, and perhaps even appreciative that he had traveled so far. He pictured her rushing into his arms and expressing regret for her uncertainty. He was unaware that his fantasy would degenerate into something much worse in a matter of seconds. He hesitated when he got to her door. There's laughter inside, low and quiet and very personal. He touched the door with his ear. Holden's voice, a man's. Claire giggles in response. He was frozen in place by the sound. As understanding hit him like ice water, his pulse roared in his ears. He had time to go back. He may leave. However, Cal Abbott had never been the type to go. He pushed the door open after inserting the master key card, which he had bribed from a preoccupied bellhop, into the lock. The scene in front of him struck him like a freight train. The bright morning light traced the muscles on Holden's back as he stood close to the bed without a shirt. Claire stared up in fear, her silk robe barely covering her. The nightstand's wine glasses spoke for themselves. They were real, reckless, and half-drunk. "Kyle?" Claire's voice broke with incredulity. "Why are you in this place?" He was mute. All he could do for a long, terrible minute was stare at her, at him, at the bed that had been his and now someone else's territory. As though his mind was refusing to comprehend the sight, his vision became blurry. He eventually managed, his voice shaking with anger and anguish. "I could ask you the same thing. However, I suppose I already know the solution." Holden took a step forward and held up his hands. "Look, Kyle, this isn't what it appears to be." "Avoid it," Kyle yelled. "You have no right to utter that cliché to me. I can identify it." Tears clouded Claire's eyes. "Please, Kyle, you wouldn't have come." He spat, his words cutting the air in two. "Yeah, well, maybe if you'd been honest with me, I wouldn't have had to." "Claire, I came here to defend us. However, it appears that I'm too late." Ever the composed one, Holden attempted to defuse the situation, but Kyle didn't listen. Voices rose as the dispute intensified, and hotel occupants started to gaze down the corridor through broken doors. Heartbreak turned to humiliation, and shame turned to rage in Kyle's case. His head racing, he walked out of the room, trembling. Then he summoned Audra downstairs. In a mocking yet inquisitive tone, she responded on the first ring. "All right?" With ease, she said. "Did you find what you were trying to find?" Kyle's silence was plenty. She cooed. "Oh, Kyle. I informed you. Claire is not who you believe her to be. But I'm still here, so don't worry. I always am." Her voice hardly registered the bitterness. After hanging up, Kyle placed another drink order until his rage turned into something else. "I'm sorry." Disgrace. Perplexity. Claire, meanwhile, was sitting on the bed's edge upstairs, her cheeks smeared with tears. She retreated when Holden reached for her. She said he wasn't supposed to see that. Not in this manner. Holden let out a sigh. "Claire, you have no control over how others perceive you. Only you can live your truth." Truth, however, had never felt so burdensome to Claire. Yes, she had desired independence, but not devastation. Not the destruction of whatever tenuous respect she and Kyle still shared. The aftermath of earlier storms was building back in Genoa City. Jill Abbott and Nikki Newman were at odds once more, this time over a corporate merger that made it difficult to distinguish between rivalry and friendship. Their first amicable encounter at the Newman Ranch swiftly descended into hostility. Jill folded her arms and yelled, "Let's not act like we're doing this for Catherine's legacy." "Nikaki, you want to be in charge. You always have." Without flinching, Nikki raised her chin. "Jill, I'm defending the business. It is not my concern if that makes you feel threatened." Beneath the acerbic remarks, however, was something more profound. Two women who had lost too much, loved too much, and battled too long to give up now. Years of rivalry buried their mutual respect, which had been forged in decades of disaster. However, a tenuous ceasefire developed at the end of their meeting, when the insults had subsided and the wine glasses were empty. Despite their pride preventing them from publicly acknowledging it, Catherine Chancellor's memories kept them together. Tessa Porter was experiencing increasing anxiety across town. concerning Mariah Copeland's therapeutic retreat. She had heard concerning information about the enigmatic elderly guy Mariah had attacked during a dissociative episode. Under Daniel's direction, the inquiry had found discrepancies. The man who went missing wasn't who he said he was. As Tessa told Sharon everything, her stomach turned over. She claimed that she attempted to choke him, Sharon. However, what would happen if it wasn't an accident? Ever the soothing voice, Sharon put a hand on her shoulder. Tessa, we'll discover the truth, whatever it is. However, despite Sharon's assurances, Tessa's eyes continued to grow dreadful. Since the kidnapping years prior, Mariah's mind had been brittle, and this new trauma threatened to blow it all apart. A conflict was taking place between Nick Newman and Phyllis Summers in another location. At Crimson Lights, he discovered her with her laptop open and whispering to herself about Kane Ashby and the alleged technological revolution he was pitching to Chancellor Winters. You're working with Kane now. Nick stepped into the seat across from her and inquired, Did you not learn your lesson from the previous 10 instances? Phyllis glared at him. Nick, I'm doing what I have to do. You should know how to survive of all people. His voice was low as he leaned forward. Red, this isn't survival. This is destroying oneself. Bitterly she laughed. You say that as if something were different. The tension between them had never really subsided, and their fight retained the ghost of past love. Nick wanted to assist her, but Phyllis was like a hurricane. All you could do was try to stay alive. However, the maelstrom that was engulfing Kyle Abbott was just getting started back in Los Angeles. By evening, rumors of his spectacular encounter had already spread across Genoa City. Always keeping an eye on things, Victor Newman called Jack and said, Control your son before he destroys himself and your family's reputation. Jack hung up, his worried eyes heavy. Diane tried to console him as she stood next to him. He will return home, she muttered. He always does. This time, though, even she wasn't certain. That evening, Cal sat on the beach and gazed out to sea. The waves smashed mercilessly and relentlessly, just like the pandemonium within his thoughts. All he felt now was emptiness, whereas before he had loved Claire with all his heart. He kept thinking about Audra's words, the deception, the smile, the way she had sown all the seeds that had brought him to this point. Was he a victim of play, or was he just meant to be a man who ruined everything he came into contact with? He appeared hollow when Claire eventually located him the following morning. Standing in the golden sunlight, she whispered quietly, I didn't mean for it to happen. I simply needed some space. Cal gave a sour laugh. Indeed, you discovered it in Holden's bed. She winced. That is unfair. Just, with red eyes, he turned to face her. Do you believe any of this to be fair? Claire, I gave you everything. And you wasted it on a man you hardly know. Her eyes glowed with tears. Perhaps that is the issue. Everything you provided me, with the exception of freedom. Her remarks were a slap in the face. Additionally, Cal had no response for the first time. She was right, and he simply gazed at her. He had suffocated her because he loved her so much. Then, in silence, she walked off down the beach, disappearing into the California sun. The man who had it all, Kyle Abbott, was left with nothing except sorrow and the heartbreaking recollection of a hotel door that was locked and the laughter that went on behind it. The damage was done by the time Kyle got back to Genoa City. The younger Abbott was inconsolable despite Jack's attempts to pacify him. Kyle stated bluntly, I saw the truth. And I can't stop seeing it. But heartbreak isn't the end of life in Genoa City. Even though Tessa's worries about Mariah were growing, Nikki and Jill's relationship was changing, and Phyllis's plots were going awry. Kyle's tragedy seemed to have the longest-lasting impact. Because love was not just brittle, but deadly in the metropolis of never-ending rivalries and short-lived truces. And one thing was certain as the Abbott and Newman families braced themselves for yet another round of treachery. Kyle's heartbreaking discovery in L.A. wasn't the story's conclusion. Everything that was ahead would be ignited by that spark.